which we are. And ooh, I gotta adjust my
And then
screen
they're like,
now.
wait, not live. Wait, no live.
Oh, it's just
That's
got
a good
me.
idea.
I'm zoomed in for some reason,
Oh.
so I can fix that. Oh, I know why it is. That makes sense. The way Skype crops the video is slightly different from the way that Discord does.
Gotcha.
And so what I end up with is I look a little funky because the camera, for some reason it crops in and has the camera like closer to my face.
Gotcha. Do you want to do Discord instead? I can figure out how to use it.
Nah, it's fine.
Okay.
It's a minor change and it's not worth dealing with all that.
Okie dokie.
All I'm gonna do here is throw this back there.
Ooh, neat.
And we're good. Okay. No, not that button. That button. I will figure this out eventually. I kind of know what I'm doing. Or at least I can pretend like I know what I'm doing.
Have you been smoking grass?
Oh, Adam, thank you for the follow.
I can pause for time. I can do a little shuffle.
And
Hello there and howdy do.
All right. And then let's see. I'll make sure that you can hear this.
Good guess, but actually no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So you can hear that. The stream can hear that. So you'll hear the intro, the outro, all the good stuff as we do it. And I'm ready to start if you are.
I'm good to go.
Okay. No, I don't care for reactions, Skype. Leave me alone. Oh. Amy in the chat lies. You're right. I don't know what I'm doing, but I fake it well. So that's pretend you know what you're doing. Is my entire podcast career. Yes, Ace, you are correct.
Not just podcast career. Let me tell you on my end.
I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine earlier today. We were talking, and he was complaining about having responsibilities at his job now.
Uh-huh.
Like he's leading a team of people and all of this stuff. And I'm like, just remember, just fake that you know what you're doing for as long as they will pay you to do it.
It's true. It's true. Let's hope it takes them at least a year to figure out. And by that point, they don't want to train someone new, and you're golden.
Yep. Then you're in. Okay. Well,
unless you're a doctor.
Right. That is the exception that proves the rule. Okay. Well, if you're ready, I am ready. So let's talk Muppets. So we are going to get started in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, bring that back! I'm so nervous. If I'm not funny, I won't be able to live with myself.
Well, then you'll have to get another apartment, won't you?
You know, I hear this movie is dynamite.
Get your fresh organic popcorn. Only $1. Oh, honey, buy me some, please.
Oh, sure, Mama, nothing's too good for my woman.
Woman! Well, I like the movie fine so far.
It hasn't started yet.
That's what I like about it.
Okay, let's all go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, a.k.a. TV's Travis. This is episode number 173, and my guest this week to watch The Muppet movie, because she'd never seen it before, is Emily Edwards. Emily, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, I got to start with this. You are a fan of The Muppets, yes?
I love the Muppets. I
Okay.
really do.
So how is it you hadn't seen this movie?
I don't know. The best I can come up with is that, like, I grew up in the era of Blockbuster, and it's like that was like the only way you were going to get to see movies that they weren't going to show on TV. And like we had cable when I was a kid, but not like all the channels. And
Okay.
so I, had like Nickelodeon, which is where they played the Muppet Show when I was a kid. And I had seen possibly every episode of the Muppet Show. And they had Muppet Babies, which was like a cartoon when I was a little.
Hmm.
And then I think the Muppets were bought by Disney by the time I was like a little bit older, but like this was before on demand. This was before you could like get stuff from Netflix. And so like it's just a big gaping black hole in my Muppet resume. Like I don't know how I haven't seen this before.
Now, you've seen other Muppet movies, though.
Yes, I
Okay.
have possibly seen the Muppet Christmas Carol more than any other movie ever made. Like I've watched it at least 3 times a year since it came out in 1992.
That is a lot of times. I was going to bring that up because that is one of my favorite Christmas movies, hands down. The first year of this show, all the Christmas movies for December that I watched were variations of A Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's good.
And so one of them had to be Muppet Christmas Carol because I loved it, and I found someone who hadn't seen it, and we enjoyed the hell out of that. I'm like you. I grew up with Muppets, Muppet Show, but Muppet Babies a lot too because it was a Saturday morning cartoon.
Exactly.
Muppet Christmas Carol, Muppet Treasure Island,
I
Muppets.
love Muppet.
Yeah,
Treasure
Muppets from
Island.
Space.
Yep.
All of those. The Muppet movie was one I didn't see until I got a little bit older because it had
Yeah.
come out in '79, and kind of like I'm around the same age as you, so it was the same thing. Blockbuster, or our local one was called Horizon Video when I was a kid.
Ooh.
And yeah, so you hadn't seen this one yet, but knowing the Muppets and kind of knowing everything, were you familiar with sort of how the framing device of what this movie was?
I not really. Like I have seen obviously like clips from it before where, like I like puppetry a lot. This is sounding so weird, but hey, I really like puppets. And so like I remember seeing like, oh my gosh, they have Kermit riding a bicycle. Like how hard is that for a marionette? And it turns out incredibly hard. And obviously I'd heard like Rainbow Connection before, but I didn't know like the entire like conceit behind the entire movie, like, or that like they're showing it in a screening
Yeah.
and then like I had no idea any of that. Like I didn't know half of the cameos, like nothing.
And boy, is it ever like the most Muppet thing to do to have the first movie starring the Muppets, be framed around we're watching the movie starring the Muppets with the Muppets. It's so perfect. Like that's such a Henson Frank Oz thing to do, and it gets very meta. I love the meta jokes we'll get into that they did, as well as the technical aspects of what went on screen.
It's an amazing movie. Like craft speaking, like it's an amazing movie.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. 1979 is when this came out. This was in the middle of, I think they did it in between parts of season 3 of The Muppet Show. So this was at like the height of the Muppets' powers. I think the Muppet Show at the time was like the highest rated television show out there.
Which like is mind-boggling to me. It's like Game of Thrones level, like global fame, and it's puppets, and like the show when you watch it now, you're like, this isn't. It's weird. It's weird as all get out because they have like, especially in the Muppet Show, like they would have like, here's this like a modern dancer, and you're just like, why? This is so bizarre, and she's dancing with flamingos. Like, why is this happening? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and so indicative of the fact that everyone who made this was on drugs. Like,
Well, we talked about on another show that I do, the Muppet Show, recently, and one of the things that got brought up during that was you weren't anyone until you cameoed and guested on the Muppet Show or with the Muppets.
it's like hosting
in some way.
SNL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And boy, this movie went for it with the cameos too. And I guess they had to change some of them because a lot of the cameos, like scheduling conflicts, caused where all right, we'll
makes
switch
sense.
that up, and
Yeah.
and it worked. But that's been a staple of the Muppets since the Muppet Show, is the cameos and the guest stars and all the people that they bring in, and they're amazing. And they're never who you think they're going to be either.
Never. Absolutely. Okay. I have a massive crush on James, the guy who plays El Slizo.
Oh, James
God, why
Coburn.
am James Coburn. Why do every single time I mention him, I forget his name? And of course, I'm going like, I have a massive crush on this guy whose name I can never remember.
Right.
James Coburn. He's James Coburn at the height of James Coburn, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like just there. He has one line. Madeline Kahn is slinking through the bar, and for like Carol Kane is there as a running gag.
Yep. It's like Dom DeLuise popping up in the swamp in the beginning of it, and just a completely like it makes no sense part, but the cameo is great. And
He's Bernie, the agent. Like
yes,
that's him. That's the character, Bernie, the agent. Like he's the only agent in Hollywood. The
only one.
agent.
Yep.
The only
Elliot
one.
Gould was a fun one because I remember he was in. I think he's in the Great Muppet Caper as well.
Yes, he is.
But I had forgotten that he was in this one, and then I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shit, it's Elliot Gould. All right.
Yeah.
You know, just so many of them. But Bob Hope and Fozzie Bear sharing a scene is just like that's a cherry on top of the
It
amazing
really
Sunday.
is. It's just beautiful. And the fact that like literally all of these people are there for 5 lines tops. Like this is an hour commitment for these people to be doing this. And you know that they were just sort of like, sure, I've got Thursday morning off. Let me just come by and be in the Muppet movie.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Martin, brilliant, and
Priceless.
his role as that waiter is great.
With the lederhosen shorts and the Three Amigos jacket that doesn't
yes.
match.
Oh, I loved that. Cloris Leachman, and then like you have James Coburn, Dom DeLuise, Cloris Leachman, Richard Pryor selling balloons at a carnival,
Yep.
and then Orson Welles at the end of the movie with one line of dialogue, and like,
Which is one of the greatest lines of dialogue I have ever heard
it's
in
so
my
good.
life. Like my husband wasn't in the room like when the line was spoken, and I started cackling and screaming like so loud because it was so funny. And he's like, "What could it have been? Like, what is this line of dialogue that has you just rolling on the floor laughing?" And I'm like, "It was perfect. It was just absolutely perfect."
And I mean, it's Orson Welles who I'd listen to read a phone book, so
Yes, of
like
course.
it's perfect. And then Charles Durning as Doc Hopper was wonderful. Again, there's someone else that I just love to see and stuff.
And
He's just so much fun.
It's so close to his character in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, too.
It
where
really
I'm
is.
just like, oh, it wasn't even a stretch.
No, and then and Austin Pendleton, I'd forgotten was in this as Max.
Yeah.
Who I immediately when I see him, I think Short Circuit because
That's where he's from.
which is a movie that is near and dear to my heart as well. And so like I see him and I'm just like, oh yeah, it's he was in Short Circuit, and that's it. That's where it stops for me.
They played that movie every single Saturday of my life. Like it was like WPIX Channel 11 Saturday movies, and it was Short Circuit with Johnny Five every single Saturday. It must have been so cheap.
It probably was. Some people think that the sequel is better. I disagree. I think the first movie is the superior movie, but I will say the sequel is better than I remember it.
Okay.
Last one is Edgar Bergen, who was himself with Charlie McCarthy, and this was he passed away shortly after filming his scene, so they did dedicate the movie to him. But that was a nice moment because if you are a fan of Henson at all, you know that Henson looked up to Edgar Bergen a lot. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, even though ventriloquist dummies are always jarring when you see them in any context.
Oh, sure.
There's no like way you just watching it and don't just go, oh wait, no, this is sweet. Like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it's not a horror movie starring a killer dummy. It's just the dummy.
It's just the dummy.
But Mel Brooks too. I forgot to mention, and Milton Berle.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I always forget that like Milton Berle was not a good person. Like he was wildly famous, but he was supposedly one of the meanest people in Hollywood, like of all time.
I mean, probably. You don't work in Hollywood as long as he did without becoming
That's
somewhat
true.
callous. Anyway,
That's true.
But yeah, him and Mel Brooks, and it's just they're cameos for the sake of cameos, but yet none of them feel like they're out of place either.
Yeah.
It's
Every single
weird
one
with
does actually move the plot forward.
yeah, and I think that's a testament to like that's the Muppets, especially in this era
Mm-hmm.
between the Muppet Show on through a lot of the movies moving into like the early '90s was like the cameos were you were expecting them, but they did always have something to do with moving things forward, whether it's just giving ice cream to somebody or convincing Gonzo to buy all the balloons. Like
Yeah.
doesn't matter. There's a purpose to it, and I like that because I love cameos just for the sake of cameos. I'm fine with that, like fan service
Yeah.
type.
Yeah.
But I like how they give a pretty good reason for all of them to be around there.
Yeah, like I remember like Muppets Most Wanted, which is like one of the more recent like theatrically released Muppet movies. Like they just kind of had cameos for the sake of cameos, which is fine. Again, you're always just kind of like, yeah, of course you're going to show up for the Muppets. Like why wouldn't you? If you have any comedic bone in your body, you're going to show up for the Muppets. But, I always do like it when they do have someone there for a purpose. Like of course Richard Pryor is the one interacting with Gonzo. Of course
Right.
Bob Hope is the one interacting with Fozzie Bear. Like it makes perfect total sense.
Yes, yeah, and that's what makes it work is that they pair them correctly. Like Steve Martin, especially in the late '70s, early '80s, is perfect as this insolent waiter
Yes,
who's just like
absolutely.
sarcastic because that's who he was as a comedian. So
Mm-hmm.
like you just nail that perfectly. I enjoyed every single cameo and all of them just made me just chuckle and kind of do the DiCaprio meme of pointing at the screen and all of that. I loved it, every bit of it. And then you get to the puppets themselves, the Muppets, and everyone's here, and it's such a great way to do it. So they do this framing thing where they're watching their own first movie,
Mm-hmm.
and the plot of the movie is how the Muppets all met each other and
Yeah.
how everything came together, which is a super fun thing to do because if you're fans of the Muppets, you know that they're just all like they've just been together.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
to get this kind of origin story of the crew of the Muppets and how they met is really fun because they didn't make it too like there wasn't this heavy-handedness to it at all. It was just like Kermit decides
It's a
to
road
leave
trip
the
movie.
swamp. Yeah, Kermit decides to leave the swamp, road trip, and hilarity ensues.
It's lovely.
It's so much fun. Like he ends up in this seedy part of town at the El Slizo Cafe, which is a great name for a cafe, and I kind of want to start one. I want to open something like that. But he meets Fozzie Bear there. Why? Because Fozzie's filling in for the dancing girls.
The dancing girls are on vacation.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And
It's this really rough bar, and there's like bar fights, and it's filthy, and like if you look around in the background, like all the humans are dressed up as like a French or like a Venetian gondolier and like a
Yep.
French chef. It's like the bus in Speed, where it's just like someone of every color and flavor in the background.
yes, oh, it was so good. And then and I forgot Telly Savalas as well.
Yes.
Was with Madeline Kahn, and that was a great moment. Are you hitting on my girl? Yes, he was. And Kermit's just like, I don't even know what's going on here. Like he's so confused.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get that's how Kermit and Fozzie meet, and they take off in Fozzie's uncle's Studebaker
Mm-hmm.
and begin
Which
their
is the
road trip.
perfect car. It's the perfect car.
It is, and they're being followed by Doc Hopper, who just wants Kermit as the spokesman for his restaurant, his Frog Legs restaurant.
Spokesman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a really funny moment because Max had seen Kermit earlier and then must have followed him or something to see him dancing at the bar and immediately is able to call Doc Hopper over in the middle of the night, whenever that is.
Exactly.
Like it's so ridiculous and it's so perfect, and they immediately, of course, Kermit wants nothing to do with it because it's horrifying, and honestly, it is horrifying. Like,
It is.
why would you want an actual frog to be the spokesman for your restaurant serving frog legs?
One of the lines is literally like, I'm envisioning all these little frogs on crutches. And it's like, no, Kermit, that's not what they do with the frogs.
No, but what I love is like there's that moment when that line happens and Max has the realization like, oh no, what am I part of?
Yeah.
Which is great because that sets up what he does later on.
the whole thing.
Yeah, and so it's so much fun, and you get to see them run into Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. And it's super fun. Like, I love that scene. I love that line where they open up the door to the church and Fozzie's like, oh, they don't look like Presbyterians.
They don't look like Presbyterians.
And you get to meet that band and the wonderful musical numbers. Then they repaint the Studebaker, which I think
psychedelic colors.
Yeah, and I think that Studebaker might be at the Studebaker Museum now.
I believe it is.
I know I read somewhere where one of the Studebakers from the movie was.
I hope it's the one that's all different colors with like the bubbles and the stars and
Yes.
everything. I hope that's the one.
Like, Janice had a hand in most of that.
Oh,
because that's total
absolutely.
Janice. But yeah, you see them meet them, and I love too how, like, there's so much that is technically fantastic with the puppet work, and then there's other moments where they just like cut away from something that's going to happen, like the collision with Gonzo's plumbing truck. Is so good because it's just the two vehicles coming towards each other, and then all of a sudden it's a cut, and there's Gonzo on top of it, and he's like, "You call that a near miss?" And you get up to the wide shot, and his truck is just upside down on top of the Studebaker.
See, one of my favorite things about this movie is that it does something that I request of more movies, which is you don't have to explain how things happen. They just do. And so you don't need the history. You don't need the lore. You don't need the mechanics. You don't need the science. Things just happen because they do. And that is the perfect scene to explain Muppet logic, where it's like, you need the sight gag of the plumbing truck being upside down on the Studebaker, but you don't actually have to show it happen because it would be very difficult.
It would be very difficult, and it wouldn't be a Muppet joke at that point.
Exactly.
It would lose the ridiculous nature of that moment, because that's what makes it a Muppet moment is they're upside down. Okay, sure, why not?
Yeah, it's like almost in the church scene with the Electric Mayhem where they're like, oh, we've already been through like 15 or 20 minutes of this movie. We don't want to recap for you, so read the script. And they hand the script to Dr. Teeth, and while Kermit and Fozzie take a nap.
Yes.
And then it's like the Wayne's World, do-do-do-do, and then they get to the scene where they're like meeting Dr. Teeth, and it's like, perfect. That is exactly what you need to have happen in a Muppet movie.
And again, like the Muppets, not only should they have the ridiculous jokes like we talked about, but also fourth wall breaks and the meta humor that is like it's not the Muppets without that.
Exactly.
So, and they nailed that right away, like early on when the second Hare Krishna joke is made. Because the first time around, that's a funny joke. When Kermit's in the swamp and Bernie the agent comes up and he's like, "I'm lost. Have you tried Hare Krishna?"
Yeah, which is such a 1979 joke.
Oh,
like,
it is.
It's such a joke of the time. And it's stuck around, but like I wonder if people born after a certain time, like kids born in the 2000s, do you get Hare Krishna jokes or
I mean, probably
no?
not. But like that's a great joke. And then 10 minutes later to already call back that joke is perfect, because now it's Kermit saying, Fozzie looks lost, and the guy behind him is just like, "Oh, you should try Hare Krishna." And to have Kermit's reaction be like, "Oh, great, a running gag."
Yeah, exactly. And then 5 minutes after that, the preacher on the church that they go and they find the Electric Mayhem is like Reverend Hare Krishna, and it's just, and that's it. 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the movie, the running gag is spent and they never do it again. And it's so good. They're like, "Oh, we're not going to torture you for 2 hours with Hare Krishna jokes. That would be too much."
And talk about the perfect third act to that joke is to have it written in the background and it's Reverend Hare Krishna. I backed it up to watch that again this time around because I'd forgotten. I knew, it's been a long time since I'd seen this movie, so some of the jokes just were like fresh for me, and that was one. I was like, nope, backing that up. I gotta make sure I read that right.
Christian church.
So good.
It's perfect.
Meeting Gonzo and having Gonzo be like hopping mad in the back of the Studebaker. That's another great moment. Oh, he's got a sense of humor, and just having them, like, for no reason is given. they stop at this carnival in this small town on the side, and because why not? We
They're
need a
on
reason.
a clock, and
Yeah.
they're just like, we're gonna stop.
Yep.
In what is obviously Griffith Park in Los Angeles, and we're gonna pretend like it isn't.
Yep. And so to have them there, and like, because we got to have them meet Miss Piggy, and Miss Piggy's in a beauty contest that she wins because it's Miss Piggy.
Because it's Piggy.
And so I love all of that, and you get great interactions from everybody, and then like coming back around, Dr. Teeth kind of showing back up and all the stuff, and they're on that clock, but it's interesting because they're on the clock, but it never has this sense of tension.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole movie.
It's not like, help me, MacGruber, there are only 30 seconds left. Like, there's no sense of actual urgency, even though they have, like next week is what it says in the Variety that they hold up where they're holding frog auditions. And, like, that could be 3 days from now or 7 days from now. And they have to drive, presumably, across the country. And, it's not just like a skip hopping from Nevada to, like, Southern California. The assumption, the projection is that it's well across the country, and they're just taking their jolly old sweet time.
Yeah, I mean, even in their first song, Fozzie makes some mention of "We just left Rhode Island," so who knows where they started? They made it up to Rhode Island in the wrong direction. They were in Canada at one point, just because.
Just all over. But
I love that, and then there is the small moment where they're stopped for the night and they're sitting around the campfire when kind of Kermit has his little existential crisis of like, I didn't promise anyone anything. And then he's talking to himself, which is a very weird moment because they don't frame it at all. It's just like he's talking to himself, but then all of a sudden he's just there. And it's just two Kermits.
He's in duplicate. Yeah.
For whatever reason. Like, does anyone else see this other Kermit? We don't know.
Exactly. We understood you were talking to yourself when you were just gazing at the stars and having a little Kermit soliloquy. You didn't have to actually speak to yourself as well.
But it did make for a fun visual. And I love how then it just sort of like they get to the end and they're making their movie.
Yeah.
And it's like old school Hollywood, and you get to see everybody show up again. And then that last
huge soundstage.
Oh yeah, that was a gigantic soundstage.
Yeah.
And then that final shot of like every Muppet in existence in that one place was.
I actually teared up because you could see the Fraggles, you could see another one of my absolute favorite shows and of all time. You could see all the Sesame Street Muppets. You could see just like all the weird little Muppets that they had one-offs of on the show and stuff like that. It was just, apparently they really did collect like every puppet they ever made and like put it in the scene. And they called on like all the puppeteers from like west of the Rockies, and because like we can't just have like Frank Oz doing like 6 different puppets. Right. That's not how puppetry works.
So they just had like, I think it was 200 and something puppets, or 200, might have been 200 puppeteers and like 170 puppets or something.
Yeah, some of them take 2 people and things like that.
And it's just amazing. And then, we wrap it up back in the screening room with the Muppets and we call it a day. And like, that's the movie. But that just saying that is a disservice to what went into making this. Like, puppeteering, I can
only imagine.
Yeah, because puppeteering itself is already just an amazing art form. And Jim Henson purposely wanted to like up the ante with this movie. He got a bigger budget than the show had, and so he wanted to do some technical stuff. So there is what people have to understand, especially as you get to the younger and younger generations who have spent a lot more time with more modern puppets and more modern Muppet series and movies. This was a time where they had blue screen to use to composite stuff, which they did for the dancing of Fozzie and Kermit. But that's it. They can composite 2 optical shots together, but there is no computer graphics at all, and there's no way to just like draw stuff out like you can do today where you can draw out your wires. You have to in camera set all that stuff up. And that's a lot more difficult and takes more time
on film that runs out that you have to pay for.
Yeah. So you got to test it over and over to make sure it's going to work so that you can do as few takes as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
And what do? They open up with a long tracking shot into a giant swamp set that they used with a single Muppet sitting on a log where you can see all around him.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's just flex right away, Jim. Go
Yeah,
for it.
exactly.
Like, come on. And it
Yeah,
was Jim Henson in like a 50-gallon drum underneath that for like a full day.
Submerged. Could you imagine the claustrophobia? Like, you cannot be a puppeteer and have claustrophobia, or
No.
like a Muppeteer and have claustrophobia. Like, it sounds like the sweatiest, smelliest job, like, that doesn't involve like plumbing in any way. Because you are literally cramped in tiny enclosed spaces for hours on end with your hands above your head, which
Oh, yeah.
very uncomfortable. And like, just and did they live record the voices or did they do ADR? Do you know by any chance?
I'm going to guess that they probably live recorded on set and then would clean up with ADR a
That
good
makes
bit of
sense.
it. Because I
Yeah.
know one of the cool trivia bits I got was the cinematographer who has a great name, Isidore Mankowski.
That is a great name.
Said he enjoyed working on this movie because no one complained about the lights in their eyes or how long they had to stand in there. You just stuck them on a pole, and the puppeteers were really nice guys. When I asked Henson to move Kermit to the right for a little bit better frame, Henson wouldn't answer. Kermit did.
That's amazing.
And I feel like they definitely did a lot of recording on set for them. And really, if you think
Yeah.
about it, that would make sense given the history of Sesame Street and Muppet Show.
Yeah, for some reason, like it skipped my mind that I've seen like blooper reels from Muppets. So obviously, when the guy misspeaks, like they make, they, have footage of it. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's not just done in ADR where you never have a take of vocals that don't match the puppet movement. Like they do it a lot, and I don't know why that hadn't blipped into my mind.
Well, a lot more dialogue in movies is done via ADR than people realize.
Yeah,
in
no
general.
lie.
Um,
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember the percentage I read or heard, but I know from having a friend of mine that's a sound mixer and recordist, he's told me before too, like, yeah, more dialogue is re-recorded than you think.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, having done that, I know how difficult that is, so I am just blown away by how smoothly it can be done.
Yeah, it's so true. Like people have full recording studio setups like in their house in order to do that, so they don't have to go into a studio. And like, how else are you going to deliver quippy one-liners while like punching someone in the face and doing something incredibly athletic? Like, no matter how fit and Chris Hemsworth you are, you're going to be panting during
Yeah.
those scenes, and you can't like sound cool, calm, and collected while like wearing 30 pounds of costume and chucking
No.
fists.
No, so imagine when you're Jim Henson stuffed into a barrel, and Henson was not a small guy either. He
No,
was tall.
he wasn't. He was a wiry dude.
I mean, he was wiry, but he was very
Yeah.
tall. So he's cramming himself into this barrel to be underneath all that water so they can do the thing there. And I guess there were, I think, 2 different Kermit puppets that were used for that scene, depending on the shot, because there was one that was more motorized to kind of have a more
To
rhythmic
strum.
strumming.
Yeah.
But like that whole opening scene is just mind-boggling. If all you and more so when you think about it in the context of sitting there in 1979 and watching this, because you haven't seen anything like that.
No.
And then what is it? 5 minutes later when he's on the bike,
Yeah. He's
That-
riding a bicycle. He is
Yeah.
a puppet on a bicycle.
like that's another one where I feel like that doesn't get enough credit for how mind-blowing that is, because they had to have a marionette style thing crane above frame that they
Yeah.
were controlling his arms and legs with on this bike and to keep it upright. But again, you got to do that in a way where you can't see the wires on the camera.
Yeah. And like it's, when you think about big technical huge jumps in like movie technology and stuff, it's like James Cameron gets a lot of credit, and understandably so. Like you have like the melting stuff in the Terminator and things like that. But like making a puppet convincingly ride a bicycle
Yeah.
before you have any sort of computer technology whatsoever, it's just really like it warms my heart to think of how much money and time they spent for something that really only lasts a minute, 90 seconds in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, and they had a lot of shots of full-bodied puppets too, which typically I think up until this movie, you probably never saw a puppet from below the waist, unless the shot was only puppet legs.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to have these full-bodied ones was again just something that you didn't see. And yeah, the puppeteering that goes on is all the driving stuff is
Yeah.
because there are definitely shots you can tell where like the Studebaker is driving and they've got a stunt driver in there, or, a driver,
Yeah,
because it's a
exactly.
wide shot.
Yeah,
It's far
someone who's
enough
in a
away.
Fozzie Bear costume, it
Yeah,
happens. Yeah.
you just have somebody driving, but there are shots that are not your typical pulling the car behind a truck shot, where it's Fozzie Bear in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And the way they did that, again, very old school, but you've got Frank Oz and Jim Henson, and another puppeteer, because Fozzie would take two people to puppeteer.
He's a big puppet.
And they would be underneath the front dash of the vehicle.
In the wheel wells.
Yeah. Doing all the puppeteering. And then they would have a little person in the trunk that could be in there with a video screen and the mechanics to drive the car, and we'd be driving it by remote using a video camera mounted in the front of the Studebaker.
And I just want to stress, no matter what time of year you are doing this in Southern California, if it's that sunny, it is hot.
Yes.
It is so incredibly hot. And car air conditioners in the 1970s were not what they are today. They were very sticky. It was very hot work. I could not imagine doing something that physical in that small of a constrained area with Fozzie Bear, who is a furry puppet. It's just making heat. You just have to have no personal boundaries whatsoever.
Yeah.
You just and no hint of claustrophobia, or else you would drive yourself bananas.
I mean, there's a reason that Jim Henson was 6'3" and 190 pounds, right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
you just sweat all of that out having to do this puppeteering. And Frank Oz was the same way. They were all tall, lanky. You didn't see a lot of fat puppeteers, is what I'm saying.
No.
Because you can't keep that weight on. You're too busy sweating it all out.
They must have just been drenched at all times.
But the remote driving of the car was the one that really blew me away reading about it, because I didn't think about, I would have thought they would have done say somebody sitting in that front seat, or crouched down doing it from there. But no, they were in the trunk.
Yeah.
And so that wheel, there's actually one shot where you see the wheel in Fozzie's hand and he kind of lifts it up and you see that there's nothing attached. So that wheel just didn't do anything. And I was blown away by that. And I guess there was at least one take where the video camera didn't work. And so they were doing it by sound. They were telling the driver a little bit to the left, hold that, be careful.
My gosh.
So it just.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. In a 30s, 40s Studebaker, which has no safety precautions built into the car whatsoever. Those things were like a tin can on wheels and a 2-stroke engine.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine, you definitely don't say anything about that until after you've wrapped, and then you let Frank and Jim and the puppeteers know, yeah, we had one take where this happened. You had what?
You had what now? The producers and the insurance guy at the party are excuse me?
But it was so good. And I loved all the gags. I liked having Gonzo get stuck on the balloons, and now they got to chase him. And there's a chase going on. They're chasing Gonzo, and then they're getting chased by Max and Doc Hopper.
Yeah.
Who at one point pulls out a shotgun just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going for the tires.
There's a lot more gun violence in this than I was really prepared for. Especially, I guess it's worthwhile to mention the fact that at this point, the Muppets were not specifically for children. And that didn't really happen until Disney bought them.
Yes.
And then they started to make Muppet properties that were exclusively meant for children. And so early on Muppet stuff is super esoterically weird. You're getting Richard Pryor showing up in things which no kid is gonna at the time probably would because he was super, super famous, but still. And like, so like the gun violence coming out, you would not expect that in modern Muppet stuff. And it's like, here it is.
Yeah,
They're going
and
to have him hunt down Kermit.
like not only that, this movie's rated G at the time.
Yeah.
Which is not for 1979 doesn't surprise me, but the level of gunfire that's in it at all is
Yeah.
phenomenal given that it's a G-rated thing. Now there was no PG-13 at the time, so
Right.
it wouldn't have and this would have gotten like a PG rating had there been
exactly.
the next step up. But yeah, it's fair point to mention that this was rated G, but you're right. The Muppets weren't like a kids only thing. They were, if you watch the Muppet Show, there's a lot of jokes in there that sail over kids' heads.
Absolutely.
Because like Sesame Street was the kids' property. The Muppets was the adults' property. It was a prime time show. But they also wanted it to, it should range for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I love properties that have, jokes for the adults. That's like the best thing you can hope for things that are geared towards kids. Like you should be able to watch movies multiple times throughout your life and get new jokes. And
Yes.
that's just like the sign of really, really good writing.
It is. It's a sign of, it's what makes things timeless because I always mention like Phineas and Ferb is one where when that was popular, I
Yes.
had a stepson who loved that show, and I loved watching it with him because he would get the jokes and I would get different jokes and we would get jokes together. And I'm like, I can see this is well written. This is by people that know what they're doing. But also I think that that's like creatives. Like Henson wants stuff that's going to be family friendly. He talked about
Yeah.
not wanting to have too much violence and things. Yet he also would be part of like projects that would either the Dark Crystal and like intentionally want to be a little bit scary for kids because that's not a bad thing to scare
Yeah.
kids. Like you shouldn't be afraid to do that. Don Bluth believed
Yeah.
that as well. But also push the envelope of what you can get away with. Toe that line of like the types of humor that you can go to without going into necessarily vulgarity. Like there's a place for Meet the Feebles
Yeah.
type puppetry. And that's fine. But like the thing that makes the Muppets last for the 40 something years that it has now, 50 years, I think, right?
Yeah, it's going on 50 years. I mean, it started like Muppet branding. Like the first time he was really like in front of people was mostly SNL. Well, actually, he's had Kermit the Frog forever, like
Yeah.
since like the early 60s. But like multiple characters and stuff like that, it started on SNL. So like in the mid 70s.
Yeah. And so like 40, 50 plus years, it doesn't last unless it's like generational.
Yeah.
And puppets in general are going to kind of skew towards kids because certain adults will just look at that like they do animation. It's kid stuff. Well,
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly.
clearly. But
Yeah.
I love that longevity and the generational jokes. Like to watch a movie like the Muppet movie when I was a kid and know that, and then when I see it later on and realize that, yeah, there was stuff my parents were going to get. Like I wouldn't have known at probably 6 or 7 years old who Richard Pryor was. Like
Yeah,
that wouldn't make sense to me, or Milton Berle or any of these. But then as I get older and I learn more, it's like, oh, that's brilliant to have Milton Berle as
Yeah.
a used car salesman. To
Exactly.
have the scene
I
with
mean-
Bob Hope and Fozzie Bear together, just trading like little zingers like that is just it's perfect.
Steve Martin has one like really, really innocent joke in his spiel as the waiter, which like I wouldn't have gotten when I was a kid, where Kermit's ordered like a sparkling wine, and he's like, "Yeah, sparkling muscatel, the best of Idaho," and
Yes.
it's like, yeah.
Which was a great IMDb trivia where somebody said the wineries of Idaho did not find that joke funny. I'm like, really? You think?
Exactly.
But it is funny.
They do grow wine in Idaho.
They do.
It's yeah.
But it's definitely not champagne. It's sparkling muscatel,
No,
The
it's
best-
sparkling muscatel.
which is now going to
The
be
label even says the best of Idaho across the top.
that's going to be how I talk about wine from now on. It's just everything's going to be a sparkling muscatel.
The best of Idaho.
Because Steve Martin. I mean, Steve Martin is one of my favorites, and so he's this smarmy. I love how, I love when he drinks it. And just because it's such a Steve Martin reaction, just these full body tremors, and he spits it out.
Yeah.
Excellent choice.
Exactly. He makes him. It's a pry top like you get on a beer, and he goes, "Do you want to sniff the cap? Like, do you want to sniff the cork? No, do you want to sniff the bottle cap?"
I laughed so hard at that, like much more than I should. Do you want to smell
Now
the
that he's like almost 80, I want a Muppet movie with more Steve Martin. Can I get that again? Because it's the perfect pairing. Like after he really showed off how dexterous he still is at the end of like Only Murders in the Building season 1, where he's like drugged and he's like falling all over the place and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't do that now, and I'm half your age. My back doesn't bend like that.
No, I know. I pull a muscle just watching that kind of stuff, and
Seriously,
it's just amazing. No, Steve Martin is like the perfect foil for a Muppet
for
moment.
a Muppet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of all of like this technical stuff that we get, you got music, and these songs are great.
They're stunning. They are. I mean, Paul Williams has like such a long relationship with the Muppets, and I mean, you cannot top the sheer timelessness of Rainbow Connection to open a movie. And like, in addition to the technical aspects of Kermit sitting on that log that we were talking about and strumming a banjo, but like, it's a stunningly beautiful song. And, I probably thought it was like really, really cheesy until I hit my mid 30s, like now. And I'm just kind of like, oh no, it's so lovely. Like, you don't expect to be watching a Muppet movie and start tearing up at the opening song. And lo, I did.
Yeah, they hit you right off the bat with just a gut wrench, just a beautiful song, and it sets up Kermit so perfectly.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
then
he's like the neutral Muppet. He's not an order Muppet and he's not a chaos Muppet. He's both.
Mhm.
And he just is like, I, I love that song.
yeah, and then like the song, the road trip song with him and Fozzie in the car is perfect. It's such a great, fun little jaunt, and like it fits Fozzie so perfectly.
Yeah.
What was the one in the desert that Gonzo sings is like the kind of counterpoint to Rainbow Connection a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was reading on the IMDb trivia that apparently someone sung that at Jim Henson's funeral because it was
Yeah.
like one of Jim Henson's favorite songs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. And it was nice to see Paul Williams in the movie too as the
Yeah,
pianist.
he doesn't get enough credit for like the history he has in composition for movies. Like my husband is a film composer and he's actually like the president of the like American Society of Composers, and uh it's called ASCAP. I always forget what it stands
Oh
for.
yeah, okay.
But it's like all the people the people who handle like royalties and stuff like that. He's the president. He's never not been the president for as long as I've known my husband. Like Paul Williams is the guy. And you kind of forget that he has a long history, and not just for Muppet movies. Like he wrote music for like Barbra Streisand, and it's just like, that's Paul Williams. He's also going to work with the Muppets.
Yeah, I guess it was Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas that got him involved in at all, and then Jim Henson brought him back for this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I read, and this was such a great thing to see, was that he said that Jim Henson didn't ever, like, he was a joy to work with, and that he never wanted to hear the work in progress. He just trusted that Paul Williams was going to nail it and just be like, no, we'll just do it when we record, and I'll hear it
And
then.
you'd hand over Rainbow Connection on
Yeah.
a platter.
And then you hand him that. It's like, oh, well, shit.
Well, exactly. Well, everything else pales in comparison to Paul Williams. Let's pack it up, Frank.
Yep.
Like,
It's time to go home. But yeah, it's just, I love so many aspects of this movie, and the humor. I cannot stress how much like Muppet humor is important to me personally, but I think to humor in general, there's something about the types of humor that that they wrote into this. You got Jerry Jewell and Jack Burns writing it, but you know there's a lot of input from Frank Oz and Jim Henson and Jerry
Absolutely.
Nelson, David Goels, like all of the
Mhm.
puppeteers, because they embody these characters.
Yeah, they are them.
Yeah, and that's what makes Muppets work. It's the reason that Alf has lasted as long as he has, because Paul Fusco also did the same thing. He sort of took a page from Jim Henson, where it's like he created this character and treat that character like he actually is there. And
Yeah, like it's a real person.
and the Muppets, that's what works with them. When you see them, you don't think about there's a person puppeteering Kermit. You just see Kermit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's magic. It's pure magic. Like, I will spoil the line from Orson Welles for you now, just in case you guys have not seen the movie or don't remember the movie. This is one of the funniest lines in a movie I have ever heard in my life. And Kermit walks into this big movie head honcho's office, played by Orson Welles, who you're not expecting. He's got all the Muppets behind him flanking. They are all coming to Hollywood because they all want to be entertainers. And Kermit says to, Orson Welles, like, I saw your ad, for frog auditions. I'm here. And Orson Welles clicks the little thing to his secretary and says, prepare the standard rich and famous contract. And it's just like, it's great. It's such a good line.
It's a brilliantly written line. It's perfect. Again, Muppet humor.
Yes.
And then to have
perfect Muppet humor.
And to have it delivered stone-faced by Orson Welles, who, when they come into the room, his chair is turned. So all you're seeing is the back of the chair behind the opulent desk in this huge office.
Oscars against the wall. Like, it's just dripping in scenery.
And then he turns around and it's Orson Welles. And then his only line in the movie is, prepare the standard rich and famous contract.
Yes. With
so
like
amazing.
the gravitas of Citizen Kane.
Yes.
Like he's like, that's the best part about the Muppets, is that save Fozzie, almost every single joke is delivered with like sincerity. Like Fozzie's always yucking, Fozzie's always waka waka, but like almost every other joke is delivered with complete deadpan sincerity, and it is fantastic.
Which I think actually is why Fozzie works so well with the Muppets.
Yeah.
Right? Because he is the foil to that. He is the other side of that coin, and he can get away with that. But yeah, like that is what makes it work, is to have, because if you've ever seen the video of Orson Welles when he was doing like the outtakes of Orson Welles from the wine commercial, like that guy had a sense of humor and he could play around and have fun. But you get him, you have him deliver that line that way. You have, Richard Pryor doesn't have to go crazy Richard Pryor. He's just like, you want to buy all the balloons. You do. And that's like perfect. Like, I just love stuff like that. So yes.
One of the best jokes in the entire thing is Miss Piggy has, she's with Kermit. And then she gets a phone call from her agent, and she's just like, how much? Tomorrow? She just hangs up and walks, and she's just like, bye, frog, and then like walks right out.
Which is such a perfect Miss Piggy moment. It like, these are performers that just know these characters so well.
And there's so many Hollywood jokes in this. So it's like the standard rich and famous contract. How much is the commercial? Like, there's so many like snide undercuts at Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like so beautiful that that they're like, yes, we'll take your money, but then we will make fun of your industry to your face because we're a bunch of dudes playing with puppets. And how can you get mad at me?
Exactly. And you're gonna like it. You're gonna like every moment
and
of
it's
it.
gonna make you so much money.
And it did. This was the highest grossing movie of 1979.
That is bananas. What else came out in 1979 that like, because that's still like the height of movie making. Like Chinatown came out like 2 years prior to that. Like, this is like major movie time.
I'm going to find out because I am very curious to know, but it made $65 million.
That's bananas money.
And that was the U.S. and Canada. Like, it's not like it had like a huge worldwide.
Yeah.
From what I find anyway. But yeah, we'll look that up. And while I do, that again is a testament though to the popularity of the Muppets at the time. Like, they were the biggest show on television in the late 70s.
That, it doesn't blow my mind, but it really makes
Okay,
me frustrated. Okay, go for
So
it.
I read that it was the highest grossing movie. It's not. It's it's a little ways down because Superman came out in
Oh, well,
79
yeah.
and made 134 million.
There you go.
But it's still, it's still top 10 movie easily
Yeah.
for a time. And again, it's a movie starring a bunch of Muppets and cameos.
Yeah.
Because
There's
even
no
if you look at
The
like
star is Kermit the Frog.
yeah, you look at the modern Muppet movies, they always have a star or a human
Exactly.
character incorporated in with that. And this movie doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's what really frustrates me about the Muppets more than anything is that like you had the Jason Segel Muppets like earlier in the 2000s and that did really really well. And everybody was like, "Sweet, we're prepared for the Muppet Renaissance." And then it just went and they haven't done anything with them. Like I know that there's another Muppet show or like Muppets Tonight that airs on Disney Plus and they had that and like even I don't really try to watch it. Like it's frustrating that Disney really does like the Muppets to be for children.
Mm-hmm.
Cuz it just kind of squashes the magic of the Muppets.
It does. It's unfortunate. You can like when I watch something like Muppet Christmas Carol or Muppet Treasure Island, they're definitely aimed at kids.
Yeah.
But it still has that soul of the Muppets. It still has
Yeah.
some of that and that was what I felt like was missing from more the couple of more modern things that I've seen is it's just there's something missing and I can't quite tell what it is.
Mhm.
Amy in the chat says Earth to Ned is an excellent Henson Workshop show. So
Okay.
that might be something worth checking out. Earth to Ned.
Literally writing that down.
But yeah, there's some sort of special mixture, some sort of special sauce that the Muppets had
Yeah.
that just it's hard to replicate. And whether it's Henson and Oz or Goals or any of those other performers, it's hard to say. But
yeah, I wonder how much of it is actually also rooted in the songs because I know that the more recent Jason Segel Muppet movie had Brett McKenzie from Flight of the Conchords writing all the songs, and the songs are they're just dynamite. They are just amazing. And I don't recall if he came back for like the other more recent Muppet movie. I don't feel like he did. And Muppet Most Wanted was that's the one I'm trying to think of. Like I don't think he did, or even if there were that many musical numbers. And I feel like Muppets need to have razzmatazz. They need to have a moment where the big band comes in. And I mean, like, I can still sing the Cabin Fever song from Muppet Treasure Island, like start to finish.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a great song.
well, I think he was music department for the Muppets and the Muppets Most Wanted.
Okay.
But I think you've got something there because music is such an important part of Muppets and in general.
Yeah.
We talked about it on Those Were the Days recently when we were talking the Muppet Show and the musical numbers that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Not only the original one that was part of it, which was like this bass. It was Floyd and Zoot doing like a bass and saxophone jazz thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was the episode with Harry Belafonte. So he had the Banana Boat song and he had this world music song that he did. And like the exposure they would bring to certain types of music and a lot. I know jazz being a big one. A lot of jazz in like Sesame Street and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is awesome because it's not the type of music that gets enough spotlight, especially in programming like that.
Yeah. Sesame Street had so many like weird bebop numbers and stuff like that too. So it wasn't even just like weather report jazz. It was like the hard stuff. And it's like that even as a jazz fan, like there's sometimes where you're just like, is that a saxophone or is it two cats tied together? And they just like went for it. They just didn't even stop. Like someone shared a clip from Sesame Street on Twitter the other day, and I'll have to see if I can find it. But it was like straight up bebop jazz. And I'm like, this is difficult for little kids are so used to melody and basic harmony and 3-note harmony all in major chords, then to chuck bebop at them. Like, it's intense. And there's no way you can play the beginning of the Muppet Show theme song for someone and not have them instantly recognize it and then immediately break out in a giant smile. Like, that's how intrinsic music is to the Muppets. And if you're going to try to do a not musical Muppet movie, don't even bother.
Right. And you've got like the whole bit of Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, like this amazing band and Animal behind the drums, and you've got I mean, just all of that. Just all of the musical stuff, and it doesn't have to be like a song like Rainbow Connection necessarily. Like, that's a great song, but it doesn't need to be that. It can just be them just making up some weird shit. Who knows?
Yeah. I know. Man, it's just I can sing so many Muppet songs off the top of my head. Now they're all just like rapid fire going through my brain, which is not great. But like, I'm just trying to think of like, even from like the Muppet Family Christmas, where you have like amazing songs where you just like got the pass it on song, which I still make the goofy little noises from when I like hand my husband something like in the car, be like, pass it on. And it's like, of course, if you've seen that, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous, but you memorize it. And, man, it just, you have to have that.
You do. You really, really do. And it kind of ties everything together, and it gives, it's the connective tissue between the bits that they did. And, you know, I like, too, that this was a movie, because a lot of times early movies tend to feel, early movies of this type tend to feel like a collection of sketches that are loosely tied together. And this had a much better, I feel like, through line.
Absolutely.
Like, it's definitely that, but with Muppets it works. You can go a little more, you can give a little more leeway to it, but it still worked.
Yeah, like one of the things I'm thinking of is like in the beginning of Muppets Most Wanted, where they're all in separate places and they have to kind of like get the band back together. And that was definitely one that felt like almost sketch-like, except until you get to Reno and they run across like Fuzzy Bear or something like that. It was pretending to be Fozzie Bear. And for some reason, Dave Grohl is in the backup band. And that's still one of my favorite gags because Dave Grohl is just he's such a dad now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like hard to really reconcile that with like the fact that he's one of the greatest rock artists of all time. And then he's just like, I'm going to do a Muppet movie because I've got little girls. And of course, you know, like that was one that I really, really felt like they hadn't gotten they hadn't tightened the string that held everything together in the beginning of that movie. And it just felt kind of like sloppy and not like one of the magical things about this Muppet movie is that the characters are fully fleshed out of who they are. Like Fozzie is the guy who is going to take abuse to be up on stage no matter what. That is what Fozzie does. And like, you know, you have Rolf the dog, who I think could have shown a little bit more in this, but maybe he wasn't like maybe he was a newer character. And you've got Kermit, you've got Miss Piggy, who loves Kermit with all of her heart, but if Hollywood comes a knocking, she's gonna drop him like a hot rock. You know. And Gonzo is so perfect in this. Gonzo, you know, one of the movies that a lot of people blame for like maybe people turning off the Muppets was Muppets from Space. And, you know, it's a good movie. But the thing about Gonzo is that you're not supposed to confirm that he's an alien. He's just supposed to be weird. And so like this just gets him as like the weirdo so perfectly. And it's just, you have Sweetums in like the used car scenes. And he's like scaring the bejesus out of everybody. But his name is Sweetums and he doesn't want to scare everybody. And it's just like such a wonderful characterization of and perfect, succinct characterization of every single Muppet in this movie. And it's just like, wow, and you guys have not been doing this for that long. You just know who everybody is.
Yep. Sweetums in this is one of my favorite things ever, just because like it's a great introduction, and then all he wants is just to catch back up with them.
I know. My first introduction to Sweetums was there's a Muppet movie that I think might have been direct to video called The Frog Prince, and it's with Robin, and Sweetums is the bad guy, and at some point he tries to crush Robin like with his big club, and that scared the ever living daylights out of me when I was a child, to the point that I don't think I ever watched the movie again. Like
Oh,
it was
wow.
always like in my VHS collection as a kid, but I like never put it in the VCR to play it ever again, because that's how scary Sweetums was to me, because he was going after Robin. And I'm like, in this, I'm just like, oh no, he's a big teddy bear with snaggle teeth, and he's just so cute.
And that's the thing about him that's so great, is like the voice doesn't fit the face, and the face is so creepy, and then what he's saying is like a third layer to that. And so I just love all of that. This also, like, is there a better introduction to Gonzo than to have him driving a plumbing truck?
No,
Of
not
all
at all.
things, and he's the Prince of Pipes.
Uh-huh.
Like, it was
And
so
he's got
perfect.
Camilla, and
I loved that so much. I did capture a couple clips from the movie. It's weird. The way it's mixed, isolating individual audio clips is kind of tricky. Plus, there's a lot of moments that are like music related that are really funny that just don't work out of context. But I did get a few things. I got to play them because they're really funny. A lot of them are very Muppet jokes. We got a little Fozzie Bear here. This is him in the Studebaker.
A bear in his natural habitat. A Studebaker.
Also, yet again, one of those little touches that makes the Muppets work so well and tells you how much they know about these characters is when they first walk into the church. So you've got the great line of they don't look like Presbyterians, but as Kermit walks in and Fozzie's right behind him, Fozzie takes his hat off to walk into the church and walks in a little ways and then puts it back on when he sees other people wearing a hat in there. Like that, and that's 100% Fozzie Bear, and it's such a great moment, and it's one of those things where you don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be in there, but that little thing is like, I notice it now, and it just tickles me. It just warms my heart.
he's so lovely.
This is a very, very strong pun from Kermit.
I mean, if frogs couldn't hop, I'd be gone with the Schwinn.
And he delivers it like spiking the camera when he does it. And I was just like, oh, Kermit. Let's see. This one's titled Brains.
It turns the brains into guacamole.
Yes, that's what it was. Oh.
I love that Mel Brooks can't be out-camped even when he's in a scene with puppets.
Nope.
He's like, no. You're not gonna outdo me here. And he with the little brain hat, and he calls it the little yarmulke. And I'm just like, oh, Mel Brooks, you can't let the puppets have this scene. You have to steal it.
So good. Frogs.
Worldwide Studios announces open auditions for frogs wishing to become rich and famous.
Again, that's like straight out of the Muppet Handbook. Just what's the most ridiculous thing we could put in Variety magazine? Frogs looking to get rich and famous. Done. There's the joke.
Done.
Move on.
And it's like a quarter-page ad. It's huge.
It's so big. It's so amazing. Let's see. Harry.
Crazy Harry plays with electricity.
It's Crazy Harry. I had to get him.
It's so great, the fact that they really do actually call all the ancillary Muppets like by their names in like the roll call in the beginning. You have him address New Zealand. You have him address Harry. You have him address Statler and Waldorf, who weren't big Muppets by this point. Like, it's so great.
Oh, I know. Sam the Eagle, who's a favorite of mine. I love Sam.
Me too.
You got some more Fozzie Bear.
Gee, a Studebaker. Where'd you get it?
Oh, my uncle left it to me.
Huh? Is he dead?
No, he's hibernating.
And then later on, it's mentioned again that like when they go to trade the car in. Running gag.
Grief, it's a running gag.
I just love acknowledging that.
Yeah, like we weren't gonna get that it was a running gag. Thank you so much for telling me that it's a running gag.
And when we meet Gonzo for the first time.
Why are you hopping up and down?
Because I'm hopping mad.
Guy's got a sense of humor.
So good. And
I love that Gonzo tells him that he's going to go to Bombay, India to make it in show business, which, like, of course, like as an adult, you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense because you know Bollywood is huge and they make a bajillion movies a year, but like it doesn't make any sense in 1979 to American movie audiences.
Well, and that was the thing is like they wrote that joke. Jim Henson didn't realize it at the time until after the movie was done that Bollywood put out so many more movies. He just wanted Gonzo to be going to like the most remote place he could think of that would be as far away from Hollywood as possible. So it'd be the other side of the world, and turns out, except
actually, they make tons of movies.
And I agree with Amy. Bollywood Gonzo would be outstanding.
Oh my God, could you imagine a dance number?
Because it would be him and a bunch of chickens, first of all.
Exactly. Well, now I need that.
Yeah, I gotta have that. And I got one more, and it's more Gonzo. And it's a perfect Muppet joke. It's that vaudevillian humor.
Gonzo! What are you doing? About 7 knots!
It's so I cackled when I heard that. It's just it's that great humor. It's so funny. It's so perfectly done.
You're right that it is perfect vaudeville humor. And like do tons of people know George Burns and Gracie Allen? Like if you made like say goodnight Gracie joke, like would people know it? Man, my sister did a whole I was backtracking a little bit. Did you know what Odyssey of the Mind is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my sister did an Odyssey of the Mind like sketch one year when she was like in the 4th or 5th grade, and it was like the construct of it was a vaudeville show.
Okay.
And so like I have been watching like vaudeville stuff since I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, and it has so irreparably formed my sense of humor that I think that maybe is why I just love the Muppets so much. And maybe they have veered a little bit too much away from the shticky, like pulling someone off with a cane, chucking a pie in someone's face. Like that is universally always funny. It is always funny to have someone bomb on stage. And now I feel like that might be too mean for people for Fozzie Bear just to crash and burn and get out of it by screaming drinks are on the house and everybody goes up to the roof.
Which is another one that I didn't capture that audio, but that was such a good joke where everybody
like,
runs up to the top
and then
and everybody's like, "There's no drinks up here." Drinks are on the house. There's so much joy in Muppet stuff because that's the other part of it is you can have this brand of humor that is funny from anybody from 6 years old to 65 years old and older. And it works across all those levels, and they never punch down. And I think that's the biggest thing is Muppets never punch down, so the humor is never mean-spirited. You can make fun of someone without being mean-spirited. And the Muppets are great at doing that. They're great at poking fun at themselves and jokes at someone's expense without it being from a place of like negativity.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like I'm just thinking of so many of my favorite jokes from all my favorite Muppet movies where you have the like in Muppet Treasure Island when the native pigs come dancing out and then they're doing their chant, they're doing the chant, and then someone fires a gun and they go like boom boom sticks and then they just scatter. And it's so funny. It's hilarious. They have this huge like intro number and then they're just like, wait, we're out of here.
Yep.
Or like Gonzo in the annual Penguins Christmas skating party in Muppet Christmas Carol, where he's like, "Come on, Rizzo," and it's just like this hilarious gag, or Rizzo like getting like the tail, not the rat. Like it is such a great joke, and no one gets hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's again, like you mentioned, Fozzie can be up on stage just bombing, and doesn't matter because it's not. He doesn't care. He's just going to keep doing his thing. But also, like, again, there's never harm being done to anyone.
Yeah, if anything, it just makes his friends love him more whenever they watch him bomb on stage because they're just kind of like, everyone else is going to like make fun of Fozzie, but he's just going to keep doing it because he loves it so much and it's so intrinsic to who Fozzie is. And they're just kind of like, come on, buddy. let's go. You know, like, great show, Fozzie. Like, you didn't get lit on fire this time. Like,
Right.
great show. Good for you for getting up there. You broke a leg. Fantastic.
Yeah, and there's one last thing I did want to mention on the making of the movie, and that was that James Frawley was the director of this, who isn't a director you're probably going to recognize the name of because everything he did outside of this was television.
Oh,
it was television shows, television movies, and like this, and I think maybe one other theatrically released movie. That's it. But
what a resume.
Yeah, and he worked for a long time, but it's all television. But he did not have a good time making this movie, and he apparently clashed with the puppeteers and all of that, and it just wasn't a good mix, which is amazing because you wouldn't think that watching this at all.
No, it is really lovely and very joyful.
And I think what it came down to was he just didn't have experience with puppets and puppeteering and that kind of thing. And so since then, they've gone with directors that just have more experience there because there's a lot of things. I mean, you got to build all your sets, 6 feet off the ground. So you got room for the puppeteers to move around and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just found that really interesting that he did not have a good time making the movie because it doesn't show in the final product. The final product is joyful.
And it sounds like such a dream job. Like
really
you were
does.
saying, the cinematographer was just kind of like, stick the puppet on the pole, you get your light readings, you're good.
Yeah.
But and then like have some guy come in and just like, okay, now I'm Kermit. But like, that really sounds like, what a shame for him that he didn't like making it, because I think it's many people's dream jobs to direct a Muppet movie or be involved in a Muppet movie.
Absolutely.
In any capacity.
Well, this was super fun. I love this movie, and I'm really glad you finally got to see it. So now you can check that off your list, but also it's on Disney Plus. You can watch it anytime too.
I know. I was so excited because, I don't have a ton of streaming platforms. So I was like, what haven't I seen on Disney? Like, I've seen everything on Disney. Wait a second. The Muppet movie. And I thank you so much for giving me a reason to watch it, because you feel weird sometimes being like a grown adult putting on a Muppet movie, but don't. It's wonderful. It's joyful. If things are feeling bleak, watch
Absolutely.
the Muppets.
Oh, totally. There are few things in life that immediately elicit joy, and you cannot be in a bad mood after experiencing the Muppets. Weird Al Yankovic is another one of those. Like, you can't listen to Weird Al and be in a bad mood. It's just scientifically impossible. And the Muppets are the other one. Like, you can't watch the Muppets and stay in a bad mood. It's going to pull you out of that.
And on top of that, they're giving us a human Muppet, Dan Radcliffe, playing Weird Al in the not too distant future. I mean, come on.
I know. I do want to end with one of my favorite Muppet jokes of all time. And it is, what do you get when you cross an elephant and a rhinoceros?
I don't know what.
Elefino. That is forever one of my favorite jokes, period, but definitely in a top 3 Muppet jokes I've ever heard in my life. It's so good.
That is so good.
Well, Emily, let people know you've got a show. Actually, we just talked recently, recorded for that. So what is that show? Indeed. Where can people find it?
Can I curse?
Go for it.
Okay, so my show is called Fuckboys of Literature, and we discuss kind of really lousy people in literature, as you might surmise from the title. But this month, I'm a little overscheduled, so we are doing movies based on books. And in a couple of weeks, Travis is going to be on FBOL discussing an absolutely bananas, pun intended, movie, Congo by Michael Crichton. We do short episodes for free on iTunes and most streaming platforms. But if you want the full-length episode, and I know you do, you can become a patron for as little as $1, and you will hear some really dynamite episodes on movies coming up in the month of July.
And it's a super fun show. It's the second time I've been on. We talked about Who Censored Roger Rabbit before, which was a bonkers book in its own right. Yeah, and should not have been as good of a book as it was, but it really is. So definitely check out that show, and thank you for having me on there, and thank you for being on here tonight. This was a ton of fun.
not seen so many movies, so I'm always game. And thank you so much for having me back. It was absolutely wonderful.
It was also nice to be able to schedule it with you back on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Made it a little easier for both
Yeah,
of us.
just a
So
scooch.
it's definitely great. Well, thank you again so much for being on. I had a great time. And coming up next week, I've got Adam and Melanie from a podcast very similar to this, where I believe it's Adam gets Melanie to watch a new movie every week. So they're coming on. We haven't figured out what we're watching yet, so stay tuned to Twitter for that. I'm TV's Travis on Twitter. You can find out what movie I'm watching next week, and we're inching ever closer to August, which, if you're a fan of this show, you know is Cage-a-Palooza, and it's all Nick Cage all month. It'll be our 4th year of watching nothing but Nicolas Cage movies for the month of August, and I've got some fun ones. So I can't wait for that. So that's what's coming up on this show, and you can find this show wherever you get podcasts, or tvstravis.com is the easiest way, because I titled it with punctuation and commas, and it was not good SEO on my part. So tvstravis.com, or just search for Wait You Haven't Seen. Maybe it'll show up. And if you want to support the show, you can do that at Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/tvstravis. And you can buy me a cup of coffee there. So, Emily, thank you so much. This was a ton of fun.
Couldn't imagine a better Sunday night. Thank you so much.
And just remember to, as we like to say every week, enjoy your movies. And look, the world's crazy, so let's be excellent to each other.
Uh-oh, Zoot skipped the groove again.
Had to play that one for Amy because she brought it up during Those Were the Days. That was a line she used all the time, her and her sister, and I love that. Zoot skipped the groove again.
It took me to be 36 years old before I realized who every single person in Mr. Teeth's, like, who they were supposed to be. You know,
Yeah.
It's like Animal is Keith Moon, and you've got like the Sergeant Pepper, and you've got Janice, who's a mixture of Joni Mitchell and Janis Joplin.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they were all like specific people.
Yeah, the only one that always pops to mind immediately is Floyd is Joe Walsh.
Yeah.
He's definitely Joe Walsh. But yeah, I love Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. They're just amazing.
Yeah. One of my greatest regrets in life is that I did not have enough money to get married at Henson Studios, which you can do in Los Angeles if you are very, very wealthy. And we are not.
That would be pretty damn cool, though. I have to admit
you can have the Electric Mayhem play at your wedding if you have a lot of money.
Definitely don't have that, but you know.
No.
Well, Emily,
But it
thank
would
you.
have been cool.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Blessed. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't watched it yet, try knowing Nick Cage's movie. But it's bonkers.
It's on the list. I've got
Bonkers.
the only one that's nailed down for sure is I am going to watch City of Angels for the first time.
Ooh, I've never seen that either.
So I haven't seen that one. Outside of that, I'm working on possibly doing Pig. Knowing was on the list. I want to do the David Lynch one he did, but it's not available anywhere. Like, you can't even rent it or buy it.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So,
wow. I can only imagine how weird that is.
I know. And this was like 1990 or 91, so this was like coming off
Recent
the heels.
enough.
Yeah, this was coming off the heels of like Vampire's Kiss, which if you haven't seen that, have you watch that?
Okay.
We did that the first year of the show, so 2019. It is, you just have to watch it. There's no way to describe it. It's Nick Cage going full Nick Cage.
Awesome. My favorite movie of all time is Moonstruck. So, like, you know.
That's a possibility. I want to watch Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but I'm wondering if I should do it this year or if I should wait another year.
Maybe wait another year.
So I might. But yeah, I've got some fun. I love doing the Nick Cage stuff because it's such
brilliant.
there's such a breadth of things. Like you can get something as bonkers as Knowing, or last year I did Season of the Witch, which was crazy.
Yeah.
Or you get something really good, like even though he hated making it, Bringing Out the Dead is fantastic. It's such a good movie.
I saw that when I was way too young to see that movie and probably shouldn't have and should probably give it another go.
Yeah, it's Scorsese, and it's not an easy one to watch, as anything
No.
Scorsese is, but like there's a lot, there's some subtext in there. There's some things going on in there, plus the performances between him and Ving Rhames and
Fantastic.
who else is in there? Name escapes me now. But yeah, it's just good. Mark Anthony is in it.
Oh, yeah.
Cliff Curtis is in it, Cliff Curtis is one of those guys. It's like Cliff Curtis is in the movie, it's immediately better.
Done.
I love seeing him. He made what the hell is Deep Rising. You ever see that movie?
Mm-mm.
So, are you familiar with Stephen Sommers? Like
Yes.
The Mummy, G.I. Joe. Okay.
Yes.
So
Okay.
Deep Rising was the movie he made before The Mummy.
Oh.
And it is about it stars Treat Williams.
Sorry.
I know. As like the action star. He's like
he's dad age by that point. So
yeah. This is like 98, and he is he's like a Han Solo type. And
okay, I
basically
can see it.
he's a thief. And he is contracted to steal something off of a big cruise liner, like this big luxury liner. And then they get onto the luxury liner, and there's no one there.
Ooh.
And you find out that everyone's been killed, and it gets gruesome.
Okay.
But it's got Cliff Curtis and Jaimin Hansu is in it for a very small amount of time. Jason Fleming. What's his name? It's
such a weird but good cast.
Yeah, it's crazy the people that are in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's not good. But much like Congo, it's very enjoyable in its camp factor. Like it's got that stuff going for it. He outruns, and he this isn't giving anything away in the movie. He gets out of an exploding cruise ship on a jet ski.
Perfect. Done. Sold. I'm gonna rent that tomorrow.
Go for it. It's worth it. All right. Well, I'm going to let you get back to the rest of your evening. But thank you so much for being here. This has been super fun.
It's a blast. And your episode is going up soon on my show, so I will be spamming you on Twitter.
All right.
Around about that time.
Sounds good.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you
I'll
too.
talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. This was fun. Quick programming update for those of you still hanging around. I am off work from my normal day job all week. So I am going to be doing some extra streaming. I'm going to be doing some gaming and or painting. I'm probably going to do mostly gaming in the morning. I want to do each day this week maybe like a 9 to 11 a.m. So if you're just bored in the morning and want to throw on some background, I'll be hitting up 9 o'clock in the morning and doing some painting and stuff in the afternoon. Plus we've got Those Were the Days tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. And Let's Watch Highlander Season 4 recap on Tuesday. So definitely be around for those. But yeah, some extra streams this week because I'm off work. So keep an eye on Twitter and your Twitch notifications and come hang out for all of that because it's going to be fun. Yes, Amy, you should prep for that. I need to watch the episode as well. So, you know. But thank you everyone for being here. This was super fun. And I do this show for you guys. I have so much fun doing it, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who does hang out and watch it live, or watch it on or listen to the recording, download the episode. I love you guys. You're great, and yeah, let's have a good week this week, and lots of extra streams. All right, so have a good night. Bye.